Hello there, you beautiful people. Let's pick up where we left off in the last video. I've cleaned out the shell by opening a new one, basically. So let's get going. You can also search for pieces of text inside another. So, for example, if I did, say if I had X is happy birthday, and I did X dot index of birthday, right? This is going to give us back 6. And the reason for this is because every single piece of a string, every single letter has its own address, basically. It has its own index. And these indexes are just numbers, but they start counting from 0. So 0 would be H, 1 would be A, 2 would be P, 3 would be P, 4 would be Y, 5 would be this space, and 6 would be the start of our string birthday. But what if that string doesn't exist? Let's say if I did x.index of blah, 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 something like that. So if I did that, we're going to get what's called a value error, saying that the substring is not found. So either index gives you the index of where that string starts, or it gives you an error. Now, there is another way to finding certain small strings inside your big strings, and that is called the find method. So I could do x.find of birthday, and that's going to give us 6, just like index did. But the difference is, if I do x.find of some random text, instead of giving us an error, it's going to give us -1. So find is used if you don't want your program to crash in that instance, because -1 is still valid, right? It's not an error. But index is used if you want something to just hard stop if something goes wrong. So you've got a bit of flexibility there in how you want to use these methods. Do bear in mind, however, that these methods are case sensitive. So while x.index of birthday in lowercase is going to be fine, if I do x.index of birthday like that with a capital B, that's going to give us an error, say a value error saying the substring is not found. Likewise for x.find, if I do birthday lowercase, that's going to work, but x.find of the capital birthday is also going to give us the -1, which it got for just this random string up here. So make sure that when you use these methods that you match the case. And this is why, sometimes you use those dot lower and those dot upper methods, because sometimes you want to convert the string into a certain format before you try to find it, or you want to, make sure that everything works together fine. So that's just something to bear in mind there. So another thing that you can do is to strip certain pieces of text from the side, from either side of our string. So let's say we have a variable called y, and that is 0000000 happy birthday 0000000, like that. So we've got zeros on either side. We can strip off these zeros using the strip function. So y.strip 0 is going to give us happy birthday. So it removed all the zeros from either side of the string. But you can just strip one side as well. So y.lstrip 0 is going to just strip y from just strip zeros from the left hand side of y, like that. y.rstrip is just going to strip zeros from the right hand side of y. But if you just do general strip, that's going to do both sides. But do bear in mind that, again, because strings are immutable, this isn't actually changing the original y. Okay, this is just showing you what it would be like if you overwrote y with that thing, right? So strings are immutable, so you can't just change them that easily unless you overwrite them. Now, by default with the strip method, if you don't put anything in the parentheses, so say if I just did y.strip like that, it'll still work, okay, but nothing particularly happens. What it does if you don't put anything in the parentheses is that the strip method is going to strip away any spaces from both sides of the text. So why is this useful? Well, let's say I have an input, right, and I want to take someone's name. Name equals input of what is your name. okay? And then I see this come up, and I type Z, and I accidentally hit a space, right? And I press enter. If I print that name, we're going to see that there is indeed, see, look, I can't drag any further, but there is indeed a space in that variable. And I could show you the length of it. Actually, the length of the name, you can find the length of a string using the len method. Length of name, it's going to tell me 4, because we've got 3 letters and a space. But if I wanted to prevent that error from happening, what I could do is when I define this input here, name equals input, whatever it is, dot strip. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to take this input function is going to give us whatever we put in. Then it's going to then we're going to use the strip method to strip off whatever this string is, and then save that in name. So if I do that, it's going to ask me what my name is. I'm going to say Z, and I'm going to press many spaces like that. Now, if I print the name, it's just going to say that, but you can see, you can see that there's actually no spaces at the end, and I can check the length of the name, and it's going to tell me there's 3. So even though I typed all of that, all of these spaces here, because I used the strip method on whatever was inputted and then saved it in the name, we've managed to strip off all the extra spaces, which can in fact cause a lot of errors and a lot of problems in your code if you don't take care of those up front. So it's a bit of a housekeeping kind of method, which is very useful. So with that, I think I'll bring to an end this discussion of all string methods. And as promised, I'm sure you've greatly expanded your repertoire of string methods and things you can do with strings by looking at this discussion. So in this lecture, we had a look at the find method, and the index methods. Let's start there. We had a look at the index method, which allows you to find the position of a piece of text within another. And if that piece of text doesn't exist, then it's going to give you a value error, which could potentially stop your code dead in its tracks. But you've got the option to use the find method as well, which will work pretty much exactly the same, except instead of giving an error when a piece of text doesn't exist, it's going to give you -1, which perhaps is a more friendly way of stopping your code or telling you there's a problem without crashing the whole thing. But it's up to you on how you want to design your program. Sometimes an error may be more appropriate. We also saw about the strip method. So you can use the strip method to strip away pieces of extra text from a string. For example, here we had Y with loads of zeros on either side. We stripped away the zeros, and that will remove zeros from the left and zeros from the right. Strip by default takes away both sides. You can just take stuff on the left. So L strip for left strip is going to remove them just from the left. R strip is going to remove them just from the right. And if you don't put anything inside the parentheses, like here, that will by default strip away any white space or any spaces that the user accidentally types. And this is very useful when you're taking input, like here, because the user might accidentally type a space, or in my case, loads of spaces. And by using strip, you can get rid of these issues and stop problems going on in your code later on. And also you learned about the len function, which is short for length, and that will find you the length of a string. Now you can look up all these and all the other things that are available for strings by going over to the Python docs. So I'll show you how to do that. Help, then Python docs, and you will see down here on the left we want to go into the Python standard library. So let's click on that, and there is if you look here in section 4.7, you can see the text sequence type, str. It's basically a string, isn't it? So let's click that. And if you scroll down to section 4.7.1, you can see string methods. So here you've got capitalize, you've got count, and other things like that. So there's quite a few of them. Is alnum, is alpha, is digit, is decimal. You've got things that we saw and new things for you to check out if you would like. So I will leave that there. Up next, we're going to be looking at an incredibly useful concept in Python, which is slicing. And yes, it is as cool as it sounds. Slicing allows us to take a slice of a string and play with it as its own little string. So this is useful for all kinds of things, such as moving around words and letters, as well as checking if certain pieces of text are how they should be, without checking the whole string, as a whole. So I won't spoil any of the good stuff here, but just know that slicing is super useful, and especially for our email slicer project, so you're going to want to know about it. So I will see you guys in the next video.